Hello, welcome to Marshall Amplification. My name is Paul Marshall and I have the honour of showing you around the factory today. We will start off in the reception and we will take a tour around the whole factory, encompassing the service department and all of the factory floor. And here we are in engineering. This is where we start the whole process of making the amplifiers. We start at the beginning with a roll of Zintex coated mild steel, which gets fed through this machine, punches out all the holes and slots we need. It then cuts it to the exact length we need, so the waste is very minimal. The machine then takes it to the next stage further. It takes the chassis that's been cut with the arms and bends it up to give us a complete chassis. As you can see here, this is for an AVT 275. Slightly thicker mild steel than the valve amplifier, so it doesn't need any ends on it and there's no welding involved. But we'll go and have a look at the Vipers now, which is where we cut out the chassis for the valve amplifiers. And this is the other metal pressing machine. It's called the Vipers, and this works on a flat sheet of mild steel, which is not pre-coated. It's very versatile on that flat sheet, because it will not only punch out holes, it will also thread holes if we want. And it does all the valve chassis that we need. But the big thing with this machine is you do get a skeleton left over, as well as your small parts which need recycling. So all this will all go away for recycling afterwards. Then the chassis, when it comes out, has to be bent up afterwards as well, because it's on a flat sheet. It's bent up in another bay, and then the corners are welded up prior to going through to electronics. So everything is then congregated in this part of the factory before taken through to electronics as and when required. Okay, and in the electronics we're split into two departments, a hand-wired section and the circuit board amplifiers. And in this section, the hand-wired section, you can see Kathy's got one of the chassis that you saw a moment ago being made, where she's going to build it up from scratch. She's going to put in everything, all the components, and she's going to do point-to-point wiring, as you see on the circuit board with me. It's very precision wiring, very skillful job. This is the same one as Kathy's building, which is a 100-watt all-valve amplifier. And then the next section, you'll see where we make the circuit boards, and we're making the more standard amplifiers. So this is the main part of electronics. This is where the circuit boards are all put together for going into the chassis that you've already seen made. Now we've got 8 automatic insertion machines now that will load the components up for us. A few years ago we didn't have these. We had benches and benches of people putting all the components in, which is a lot more time consuming. And also the other benefit of the automatic insertion machines, they will test the components. So they take the components out of the reel behind them, they test them to make sure they're correct. They then straighten the legs, put them through the circuit board, cut the legs and bend them again so they won't fall out. And that's ready for soldering. The next part that happens is the girls on the benches have to put on the larger components. So the large components are put on the lines behind me. This is one of 3 lines we have in this department. Then the circuit board, once it's got all the components on, is fed through the flow solder machine, which creates a wave of solder to kiss the bottom of the board and solder everything in one go. Then we have the second test on our components, because when the circuit board comes out the other side of the flow solder machine, the circuit board is then tested to make sure that everything is working fine, there's no dry joints, before going through to the assembly into the chassis. Okay, we've seen the chassis being manufactured, we've seen the circuit boards being manufactured, and this is where the whole process comes together. On the benches behind me, you'll see the chassis is put on the bench, the fronts and backs are put on, the circuit boards are put in, and this is all done by hand. And then finally, before they're ready for their boxes, we have a third test that we perform on them, which is done on the computer at the end of the line, which gives out a guitar signal. It's plugged in, and the amplifier is put through its paces on the bench, before being taken through to finishing, where the wooden box is, where it's put into its wooden box. First of all, let's go through and see those boxes being made. Here we are in the wood mill. In here, we start off with the sheets of wood, and we've got a router which has got 3 different heads, 10 different tools in each head, which will cut and make all the slots we need for the boxes for the amplifiers. And the boxes are then taken further along where all the joints are done and they're glued together. The sections of the cabinet are taken away from the CNC router over to the hand router to have the dovetail joints put in. This is regardless of which type of wood it is, whether it is the MDF, chipboard or the birch ply that we use. And the sections of the cabinet are taken over to the RF oven where they are assembled and glued. Then the assembled cabinet is placed in the oven and essentially microwaved to cure the glue and the joints within minutes to enable us to work on the cabinet almost straight afterwards. And when the cabinet comes out of the oven, the battens are glued and nailed and fixed in position, thus completing the manufacture of the cabinet. The cabinet is then taken over to the spindle to round off the square corners ready for hand sanding. Every single box that we make is hand sanded. That's 8,000 boxes a month. Hand sanded to finish them off perfectly, ready for covering. But you may notice that we sign the boxes inside. But the person who makes the boxes signs them inside. And that's something that goes back to the early 70s. And Mr. Marshall used to make the boxes himself. He used to do most of the jobs on the factory floor. And we had a cabinet in back in the service department last year where a chap needed new speakers. It was an early 70s speaker cabinet. And we took the speakers out and inside was Mr. Marshall's signature. And the chap was amazed that Mr. Marshall had signed inside this cabinet. When we explained this is because he had made it himself, the chap was over the moon. Once we finished hand sanding the boxes, we put them on the hangers to bring them through the heaters, because we have to heat the boxes up to 40 degrees C, so that our water-based adhesive that we use nowadays will go tacking. We then at the same time spray the inside front of the cabinets black so there's no reflection on the stage. This is the covering department, which to me is always an amazing hive of activity. And we're making 8,000 boxes a month. That means that these chaps here are covering 8,000 boxes a month. The skill involved is amazing. It's not an area that you can automate. It is very labour intensive and very skillful. And when we're talking of hand-wired amplifiers or handmade amplifiers, these chaps, they've got no caps on the corners, so the corners have got to be finished off perfectly. And it's from here, once they've been covered up by these chaps, it goes through to the finishing department to have all the speakers or the amplifier chassis put in. The finishing department is, as the name suggests, the department where everything comes together. First of all, the cabinets are put on the bench so that all the corners can be riveted in place. The backles are then made up, the fret cloth particular to amplifier or cabinet is put on. The holes are then drilled in so that the famous script logo can be attached, as it has been since 1965. The backles are then taken and fitted into the speaker cabinet in preparation of adding the speakers. And for the combos and the amplifier heads, we then put in the chassis prior to sending them all through for our final test. Once the amplifier is complete, it goes through for its final test, where we give it a visual inspection and we guitar test every single product that we make sure it gives that Marshall sound. Then comes through, it's packaged up and set in its country-specific area, ready for export, all for the home market. And we're putting 40,000 products each month into the world market. That's it on manufacturing. Before you go though, there's a couple of other areas I'd like you to see. This is the anechoic chamber. The byproduct of the design of this room means that it's 96.4% soundproofed. but we use it to test for radio frequencies and EMC testing to make sure that we are going to pass the British standards and European standards prior to sending them away to the government testing to pass those standards. Now, this is an investment we've made as a company to enable us to do all that testing and make sure that we are going to pass the test before we send it away. Okay, this is our service department. Now, we will service amplifiers whether they are 5 years old or 40 something years old. Yeah, we have equipment coming here from the 60s which we will rebuild for people if they wish it. People can come in here and have the amplifier serviced while they wait, and that goes for people like Paul Weller or even Joe Bloggs down the road. If he's got a gig coming up that weekend, he can come in here and we'll service it while he has a cup of coffee and away he goes, which people find a very useful service. There is one last area of the factory that you haven't seen yet, and that's a small museum that we have here, where we house many of the interesting amplifiers and speaker cabs that we have collected over the years. For instance, the number one amplifier. We talked about this back in 1962 when Pete Townsend, pre the Who days, went into the shop and they made an amplifier for him. And this is the final prototype that they settled on back in 1962, that Pete Townsend plugged into. And Mr. Marshall said, that is the sound we want, that is the Marshall sound. This amplifier, interestingly, was actually sold in 1962 to a local person who wanted an amplifier as soon as possible. And production then, they were making one amplifier per week. So this amplifier was sold out the shop window and was later, after the chap's son used it for a gig, returned to the shop and he said, that was fantastic, can I have a production one now? And so they swapped it for a production one. Now, also in the museum we have a drum kit from Nico McVeigh, Iron Maiden, who's a good friend of Mr. Marshall's. We've got one of two guitar with built-in amplifiers and speakers that were made for the Spinal Tap movie, the second one. We've got a speaker cabinet belonging to a Deep Purple, which I believe was used on the Made in Japan tour. You've got the old Park amplifiers, the old Capri amplifiers, the old Kitchen Marshall. And you've even got a picture of Mr. Marshall next to me here, playing the drums in his pre-amplification days. So if ever you get the chance to come along and you want to have a look at our museum, you'll be more than welcome. And that concludes the tour of Marshall Amplification. I would like to take this opportunity to thank you for your interest in the company. We're very proud of what we do here. We're very proud to be a British company. And if you'd like any more information, please feel free to look at the website, marshallamps.com, or contact us through the website. Thank you very much. Goodbye.